understanding and insight. I would like to remind you before we open up to our major junctures for tonight's session to subscribe on our YouTube channel titled Enlightened Thought, as well as to follow us on Facebook, sydney.org.au. I welcome with me my respected brother Dr. Hassan Lami, and the program for tonight will go as follows. In part one, I will open up my participation around the notion of fasting. And in section 2 of part 1, Dr. Hassan Lami will address the principle of a good life. In part 2, I will engage with the intellectual curiosity of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And in section 2 of part 2, Dr. Hassan Lami will address the summary of Surah Al-Baqarah through the principle of self-compassion. Let us embark on this journey tonight with a brief recitation of the Holy Quran by His Eminence Sheikh Muhammad al-Dihnawi. And after Sheikh al-Dihnawi's recitation, we will open up the first participation by myself on the notion of fasting in the month of Ramadan and the philosophy of fasting, as well as the notion of fasting in previous nations and communities. And after Sheikh al-Dihnawi, we will continue with the remainder of our contributions, inshallah, as we sequentially engage with each section.
Just a quick point, there were some good comments last night on YouTube in regards to some of the questions which were raised during the program about what is the meaning of open-mindedness. Please continue with your comments, with your questions, and if there is any particular verse you would like to be addressed, you would like to be explained further, please do raise it on YouTube, on Facebook, and we will try to address it the following night. Probably if you would like, Muhammad, provide a summary of what we have talked about in the last 2 nights before starting tonight's session.
So, as you can recall with us, we've been exploring and dissecting the key themes and sub-themes in Surah Al-Baqarah so far. And as you may know, and as you may have thought with us about the significance of these themes that revolve around a key focal point, namely human responsibility. This will now begin to emerge in a more holistic context as we stem from that focused understanding of Surah Al-Baqarah to a more general context around the philosophical themes of a good life in the context of virtues. Let us begin our first section with the recitation of the Quran by Sheikh Muhammad al-Dihnawi.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون أياما معدودات فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين فمن تطوع خيرا فهو خير له وأن تصوموا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
thank you, His Eminence Sheikh Muhammad Al-Dihnawi, for this beautiful recitation of the Holy Quran. Let us begin with the ayah around fasting. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyamu kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. Sadaqa Allahu al-Aliy al-Azim. Fasting is not a new innovation. Fasting was seen and evident in past nations and communities. Let us begin with the meaning of fasting. In the English language, the word fast comes from the Teutonic word fastan, and Teutonic is the Germanic language, which is a branch of the Indo-European language family. It means to hold fast, firm onto something that has an ideal standard for our living and for our communal lives. The verb fastan in the Germanic language gives us the value of steadfast, being steadfast, meaning we have the notion of willpower at the heart of fasting. Let us look into as-sawm in the Arabic language, which means, according to one understanding, to abstain from food, sensual pleasures, as well as drink. Now, the other meaning of fasting in Arabic means to be at rest with something, to be at peace and comfort with something. What does this mean, my dear brothers and sisters, in the context of Ramadan? There's a beautiful narration by Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam. One of his companions by the name of Muawiyah bin Wahab once approached the Imam, and the Imam advised him with an existential principle that reminds us of existentialism as a modern day philosophy. He said, Ya Muawiyah, ma aqbaha bil-rajul an yamurra alayhi 70 sana wa 80 sana يعيش في ملك الله ويتنعم وهو يأكل من نعم الله ثم لا يعرف الله حق معرفته. Oh Muawiyah, what a tragic reality is it to observe someone in life who lives for 70 years or 80 years. He enjoys the prosperity by living in the kingdom of God. He enjoys the blessings of God by satisfying the bare minimum of his basic needs, and yet he fails to attain a deep knowledge of God by not attaining a deep knowledge of himself. Doesn't this remind us of Francis Bacon, the father of the scientific method in the modern age, who once said, "It is indeed a very sad event to see a man dying and very well known to everybody, but still unknown to himself." My dear brothers and sisters, how do we contextualize these insights in light of fasting? We know that Ramadan happens to give the same impression as the word burkan, which is a volcano. The same impression as the word thawaran, which means to boil and reach the peak of intensity in change, in transformation. The Arabs had a very interesting conception of Ramadan. Ramada means when the sun heats up the rock in the desert and creates that melting effect which gives the person who is observing the impression that it is about to transform 180 degrees. The Arabs also used to call the process of Ramadan in the context of cooking, when they would place a whole goat or sheep in a pit in the ground and bake it under extreme heat and cover it with hot ashes. My dear brothers and sisters, do you know that in the month of Ramadan the Muslims were engaging in the Battle of Badr? Do you know that in the month of Ramadan the Muslims opened Mecca? Doesn't this remind us of the fact that we need to engage in the Badr within ourselves? And we need to open the Mecca within our heart? My dear brothers and sisters, when we say fasting is an obligation, we are actually looking at taqwa, which is the higher objective of fasting. But what is taqwa? We know that past nations used to fast. Socrates and Plato, according to some historical reports, fasted for 10 days. We know that the disciples of Jesus Christ in the New Testament fasted for several days before Easter, in the 40-day period before Easter. We know that the Jews fast 6 obligatory days during the year. My dear brothers and sisters, what do we mean by taqwa? If we are called upon to engage in the intense heat of transforming ourselves in the month of Ramadan, how do we interpret taqwa as the highest objective of fasting? We know that when fasting we abstain from food, from water and from sex. These 3 elements are basic to human survival. As if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us a lesson. Do not make these basic essentials of your life your ultimate goal and your ultimate aim. If you can abstain from them for 30 days, then you are able to emerge from Ramadan with a deeper philosophy of life. You need to break out and through the iron cage of this 3-dimensional materialistic existence, which shackles you from exploring the bigger questions of life and from serving humanity as a whole through serving your own society. I will present to you 3 meanings of taqwa. The first, what I call the reconstruction of the soul by understanding the problems of the world. There is a beautiful narration by one of the companions of the Prophet who used to say, كان أهل اليمن يحجون ولا يتزودون. A group of people from Yemen used to go to Hajj without gearing up, without any preparation for the journey. ويقولون نحن المتوكلون. And they used to say, we place our trust in Allah. No need for preparation, no need for gearing up. ثم إذا حلوا بمكة سألوا الناس. Such that when they arrive in Mecca, they start asking people for help. حتى أنزل الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم وتزودوا فإن خير الزاد التقوى. We need to gear up, my dear brothers and sisters. Taqwa isn't just a concept in the Quran. Taqwa is a process. It's a proactive preparation for tackling the issues of the world and not just preparing your own self to be a better person. Look at this beautiful example that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. He did not mention it in the noun concept, but as a verbal action that has a continuity to it. As if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us that taqwa is a continuous, unfinished project that we will always need to work on. That's the first meaning of taqwa. The second meaning of taqwa is the sociological context. And what I mean by that is we need to explore what is taqwa in modern day society. How does taqwa look like in modern day society? Think of it this way, my dear brothers and sisters. One of the social diseases, Brother Hassan Lami, in modern day society is what we call conspicuous consumption. Conspicuous consumption is summarized in a nutshell as follows. In rich countries such as ours, people buy things they don't need with money they don't have in order to impress people they don't like. Isn't this a paradox? Conspicuous consumption is summarized in brand loyalty. Marketing companies usually look into our emotional gaps, into our spiritual poverty, and they capitalize on it. They make us invest our emotions and hopes and ideal self-image in the very product they sell us. And hence we fail to differentiate between what we want and what we need. What taqwa is teaching us is not conspicuous consumption, but rather conscious consumption. Consumption in itself is not bad, but conscious consumption is a protective shield, just like taqwa is that moral protective shield we have, which we learn from fasting in the month of Ramadan. That we purchase, we enjoy the goods and commodities by knowing our needs and by differentiating between our emotional weaknesses and the marketing aims and dynamics of the multinational corporations in today's world. And finally, taqwa, and I'll end with this, is civil disobedience. And what I mean by that is that taqwa is not limited to the individual, but is at the heart of a societal struggle. Taqwa was beautifully manifested in the struggle of the Mahatma Gandhi. On the 12th of March in 1930, the Mahatma Gandhi decided to march towards the town of Dandi from his place near Ahmedabad. On his foot, with a number of his companions, he decided to shake the foundations of the British Empire by imposing civil disobedience, asking the people to boycott the British companies who capitalized and monopolized the salt mineral which was for the native Indians. And so salt was an essential need for the Indians who live in a steamy climate. And the British powers were selling the actual mineral salt for a higher cost until the Mahatma Gandhi went to the beach side, the source of the salt mineral, and he struck an example of taqwa by teaching us how to have respect for the rule of law, but not respect for the laws that cause injustice to people. And he was an example of someone who was fasting for the sake of this type of taqwa, as the Christian poet by the name Rashid Salim al-Khoury once admired Gandhi in saying, لقد صام هندي فجوع دولة فهل ضار علجا صوم مليون مسلم. لقد صام هندي فجوع دولة. Gandhi, the Indian hero, fasted but with the purpose of facing injustice to the point that he made an entire global power fall into starvation. What are we as Muslims achieving from our fast and from our fasting, my dear brothers and sisters? I'll pause here, and now we can have a short break and then move to Sheikh Dehnawi once again to introduce Brother Lami's section 2 of part 1. Stay with us. We will go for a few minutes break. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
طوبى للعبد إذا تنمى رمضان تجلى وابتسما طوبى للعبد إذا تنمى فالخير وفير إن صرما ينجي المأثوم من النار رمضان تجلى وابتسما طوبى للعبد إذا اغتنما رمضان تجلى وابتسما طوبى للعبد إذا اغتنما فالخير وفير إن صرما ينجي المأثوم من النار ينجي المأثوم من النار رمضان تضوع في الكون وتلالأ في ساحل عيني رمضان تضوع في الكون وتلالأ في ساحل عيني هو مد لنا كف العون للفوز بحب الغفار تجلى وابتسما طوبى للعبد إذا اغتنما رمضان تجلى وابتسما طوبى للعبد إذا اغتنما فالخير وفير إن صرما ينجي المأثوم من النار ينجي المأثوم من النار هو شهر الله ومضيفه بالأجر الوافر زينه هو شهر الله ومضيفه بالأجر الوافر زينه عجبا ما أجزله من رزق وفره الباري رمضان تجلى وابتسما طوبى للعبد إذا اغتنما رمضان تجلى وابتسما طوبى للعبد إذا اغتنما فالخير وفير إن صرما ينجي المأثوم من النار ينجي المأثوم من النار.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن المتشابهات فأما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ فيتبعون ما تشابه منه ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله وما يعلم تأويله إلا الله والراسخون في العلم يقولون آمنا به كل من عند ربنا وما يذكر إلا أولو الألباب صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد.
Thank you, Sheikh, and thank you, Muhammad, for the insightful comments on the meaning of fasting and taqwa. I hope our viewers can also share their understanding of what fasting means and what is the meaning of taqwa. And my recommendation would be to look into 3 levels of fasting as explained by Al-Ghazali, where he basically expand that there are 3 dimensions or 3 levels of fasting. Sheikh recited a different verse which was for tomorrow, but the verse that I'm going to talk about is verse 216. كتب عليكم القتال وهو كره لكم وعسى أن تكرهوا شيئا وهو خير لكم وعسى أن تحبوا شيئا وهو شر لكم والله يعلم وأنتم لا تعلمون. Verse 216, Surah Al-Baqarah. So from verse 178 to verse 242, I say and I categorize this section as religious education, which comes after verse 177, which we covered last night, which is the moral compass, which gives us the indication before we engage in rituals and religious practices, we need to determine our moral compass. Because an action without its moral inclination is an action devoid of morality and devoid of meaning. Why did I choose verse 216, which comes in between all this religious education about fasting, about Hajj, about qisas, about divorce, about business transactions, and this verse emerges? I call this verse the principle to minimize suffering in life. The principle of having a good life. Conscious people, they have principles in life. And we cannot deny that on a daily basis we are suffering, we are experiencing pains. As long as a human being is living, is afflicted with pain and with different tribulations and different trials in life. So this verse is a Quranic verse in which provides human being with a principle to minimize suffering in their life. To explain the importance of such a phenomenon in human life, I would like to narrate this Chinese myth or Chinese story. They say there was an emperor, there was a Chinese king who asked all the historians and scholars of China to write books so he can know the entire human history till his day. They said, "Oh Emperor, give us 30 years and we'll come back." After 30 years, they came back and they said, "We have 40 camels carrying books about history." The emperor turned to a historian and said that, "I don't have time to read it. Go back, summarize it and tell me about the history." They said, "Give us another few years." Then they went back. They came back after a few years and they said, "Now we have 10 camels of books." He said, "I don't have time. Go back and summarize it further." Then they went and came back. They said, "We have 1 book." He said to the head historian, he said, "I'm on my deathbed. I don't have time to read that book. Tell me 1 sentence which summarizes the entire human history." He said, "Oh Emperor, I give you the 1 sentence which summarizes the entire history. People came to this world, they suffered and they left. So as you can see, it is an important phenomenon which we cannot deny. Whatever you want to describe this pain and suffering, it exists in our life. And that's why you mentioned the existential philosophy. The existential philosopher says that there is no point in philosophy if we do not tackle the issue of human suffering, how we can minimize it in our life. So now going back to the verse. The verse is telling us a worldview, how to observe the phenomena, the tribulations, the events that happen in our life. It says, you may observe an event as being very painful, but you have limited knowledge. God is all knowledgeable. You have limited knowledge. How would you know that? If that state is changed, you'll be happy, or happier, or less sad. Maybe the state you're in is a preparation for a better life. So maybe it's a very painful event, but who says this is the most painful incident that can happen in your life? Maybe there is a growth behind it. And the other side of the coin, maybe you have an attachment to something and you feel like the current state you're living is the eternal blessing. But who says that? Because you're limited by knowledge. Maybe in the next few years or days, the coin flips to the other side and you realize the state you are in was a misery. But if you have this outlook that this can change into a misery and this can change to a happiness, it wouldn't cause you further suffering because you are anticipating such a thing to happen. So Quran gives us this worldview in order to generate a new understanding about our existence. So now the question is, how can we form this happy good life? This happy, blessed life? There are in philosophy and psychology usually two broad definitions given of this happy man. Happy man is someone in the materialistic sense that has everything that he or she needs and doesn't have the thing that they don't want to have. So this is a happy man. And because this possession and non-possession is relative, so you can say I'm 80% happy because I've got A, B, C, D and I don't want to have X, Y, Z. So I'm 80% happy, I have at least 80% of that. But there is a deeper definition of a happy life. And that is to live as you're supposed to live. Because that type of life may cause you suffering, but you're supposed to live that life, you'll be happier. Now the question is, who tells us how to live? Now there are multiple possibilities. One might say reason. The reason tells you how to live. Someone might say intuition. Someone might say God. So now I will provide one of the answers to this happy good life through this outlook provided by the philosopher and the ethicist Mustafa Malikian. He says that a happy good life has three characteristics. Number one, goodness. You need to have goodness in your life. He says that there are multiple definitions, but goodness means an ethical lifestyle. And one of the possible ethical lifestyles we can have, as explained in the book The Fruits of the Earth by the French novelist, he says that my happiness lies in providing happiness for the other. So that's the first component of this happy man life. The second component, which is happiness, I will explain it in the second part. Basically, it's about having a healthy psychology. But I will explain the different components of it in the second part. And the third component is meaning, having meaning in life. Because the postmodern man is more concerned about the goodness in life, the ethics, and about the happiness, the well-being and the psychology. But this reminds me of the Greek mythology the myth of Sisyphus, where Sisyphus was punished by the gods to live to eternity, but he has to carry a rock every day to the top of the mountains, and then the rock rolls back and the Sisyphus has to go back and carry it again. Isn't that the lifestyle we live most of the time? Yes, it is of the moral compass. We do have it. We try to provide happiness for the other. Yes, we have this well-being and the healthy psychology, but devoid of meaning. We are living the myth of Sisyphus if we don't have this meaning. This reminds me of the story of Confucius. The Chinese emperor gave the verdict to kill death. He was punished by death sentence tomorrow. Confucius was in the prison, and then he told the prisoner guard, come and let's enjoy the beauty of the butterfly's wing. The guard turns to him, says that the entire China, the entire East says that you're a wise man, but I don't see any wisdom. You're dying tomorrow and telling me, come, let's enjoy the beauty of the butterfly's wing. What are you talking about? He turns to him, says that, you know what? The only reason I'm known to people as wise is because of this attribute. I give you two reasons. One, I will die tomorrow. What difference does it make? But second reason is deeper and more important, and that is that why am I fearful of tomorrow? Because of the death sentence, right? Why am I fearful of death sentence? Because I'm going to die. And what's the problem with death? I'm not going to enjoy life. But I want to enjoy life now. So a meaningful life allows us to have this enjoyment. With that, there is more to say about this verse, but I would like the audience to think about what principles do they have in life in order to have this outlook towards the world, in order to minimize suffering and pains that they go through on a daily basis. Quran provides this outlook. And you know what's interesting? This notion has been repeated twice in the Quran. This is first time. The second time is in Surah An-Nisa, verse 19, which is about the marital relationship. وَعَاشِرُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ فَإِنْ كَرِهْتُمُوهُنَّ فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَيَجْعَلُ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Because sometimes in life, maybe this marital relationship doesn't go where it has to go, but God tried to provide that psychological immunity and safety so you may persist in life and provide, as Andrejit said, in the fruits of the earth. That happens for the other, which requires a bit of sacrifice. And that's why we said in the second definition of a happy life, you live as you're supposed to live. So I leave to you, Muhammad, if you have any comments before we move to the next part.
Thank you, dear Brother Hassan, for these very eye-opening insights. I love how you connect the world history with the notions of what a happy life looks like in the Quran and how we can reflect on it in light of our contemporary problems and challenges. From there, we can understand the existential question of not just the meaning of life, but also meaning in life. Without further ado, let us take a break for a few minutes and then return to our final part for tonight's session, inshallah. Stick around.
طوبى للعبد إذا تنما رمضان تجلى وابتسما طوبى للعبد إذا تنما فالخير وفير إن صرما ينجي المأثوم من النار المأثوم من النار. رمضان تضوع في الكون وتلالأ في ساحل عيني. رمضان تضوع في الكون وتلالأ في ساحل عيني. هو مد لنا كف العون للفوز بحب الغفار. السماء طوبى للعبد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإذ قال إبراهيم رب أرني كيف تحيي الموتى قال أولم تؤمن قال بلى ولكن ليطمئن قلبي قال فخذ أربعة من الطير فصرهن إليك ثم اجعل على كل جبل منهن جزءا ثم ادعهن يأتينك سعيا واعلم أن الله عزيز حكيم.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Dear brothers and sisters, welcome once again. Ibrahim alayhi salam. We've been in the company of Ibrahim in the past few nights, exploring Ibrahim as the ideal model for humankind. When we recall Ibrahim alayhi salam, we recall his deep love for Allah, to the point that he was willing to sacrifice his own son. This is the Iman of Ibrahim. We know Ibrahim, the fighter for social justice and for freedom against the organized religion of his society. We know Ibrahim mocking the falsified consciousness of that organized religiosity in his society, destroying the idols by mocking them, teaching us as virtue ethics in philosophy today, teaches us that respect sometimes is bad. What we need with all our moral values is reverence, the virtue of reverence. And that is the capacity to know when respect needs to be exercised according to the situation and according to the right context. You cannot respect a tyrant. By virtue of having reverence, you would need to express mockery against a tyrant. You cannot respect the excessive talk of a foolish man. You can respect the intelligence of a truth seeker. You can respect the restless curiosity of a free thinker. Ibrahim alayhi salam is known for his deep iman. But the Quran presents to us the other side of Ibrahim, the intellectual, the free intellectual. Look at this holistic personality. وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبِّي أَرِنِي كَيْفَ تُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى. Now Ibrahim enters into the realm of free intellectual thinking and free intellectual research. If you may recall with us at the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, we discussed the three types of religiosities. We said the hypocrites lack critical thinking. We said the hypocrites expect others to guide them. Look at Ibrahim alayhi salam taking the initiative to ask questions about the mystery of life. It's no longer about iman. It's no longer about taslim. It's no longer about tasdeeq. This is the realm of the intellect, which has its own needs and its own questions and its own character. He turns to God and he says, show me how you enliven the death. Show me how you bring the death back to life. Ibrahim alayhi salam, by virtue of exercising his intellect, is asking not for a spiritual proof, but for a material, empirical evidence for disbelief. قَالَ أَوَلَمْ تُؤْمِنْ. Look at this beautiful dialogue that's teaching us today. We live in a society that punishes those who think. We live in a religious community where a free thinker would shiver in the presence of a scholar. We live in a community that does not dare to let the free faculties of the mind swim in the realms of knowledge. Ibrahim alayhi salam is destroying these idols for us so that we may learn the intellectual courage from him. قَالَ أَوَلَمْ تُؤْمِنْ. Then the divine reply comes, O Ibrahim, did you not believe? In the Arabic language, this is called al-istifham ma'a nafi, the negative interrogative question, which implies that the speaker expects a yes answer. قَالَ بَلَى. As if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to Ibrahim, I know you have deep iman, but let me entertain you to give you the space to express your intellectuality, which is something individual and unique to iman. قال أولم تؤمن قال بلى ولكن ليطمئن قلبي. Indeed, I have belief. But God, this is not about belief. This is not about following your commands and sacrificing Ismail. This is about my mind, which you made free. This is about the trust of having an intellect, which you gave me that opportunity in order to explore. لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. In the Quran we have two meanings to qalb: the intellectual qalb and the emotional qalb. The emotional qalb is about the sakina, is about the tranquility, the serenity within the heart. لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي in this context is about the intellectual heart. لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. They have hearts, intellectual hearts, but they don't use it. They don't use them, they don't utilize them. What do we learn here, my dear brothers and sisters? We learn 6 stages in the form of 6 lessons that Ibrahim is teaching us. Then Allah responds to him, قَالَ فَخُذْ أَرْبَعَةً مِنَ الطَّيْرِ فَصُرْهُنَّ إِلَيْكَ ثم اجعل على كل جبل منهن جزءا ثم ادعوهن يأتينك سعيا واعلم أن الله عزيز حكيم. Look at the empirical response to Ibrahim's curiosity. Allah is telling him, go and hunt for 4 birds. Let that scientific method take place. Let us engage in that first-hand investigation. The lesson we learn, number 1, is intellectual desire. 4, empirical evidence. Ibrahim alayhi salam felt this curiosity within him, number 1, and he acknowledged it. Number 2, intellectual courage. Ibrahim translated the internal desire into an external expression. He did not feel taken by fear just because he is having a dialogue with God, the ultimate reality. He did not feel a sense of guilt and remorse. Astaghfirullah, I wish I did not ask God this dangerous question. Intellectual courage, no remorse. Number 3, intellectual perseverance. Even after the negative interrogative question, أَوَلَمْ تُؤْمِنْ, Ibrahim continues to satisfy the laws of reason. قَالَ بَلَا وَلَكِنْ لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. Permit me, I need to satisfy the intellectual desire. That's perseverance. Ibrahim was not broken by the divine response. He kept going. Number 4, intellectual understanding. Now it's about the theoretical process where Allah tells him, look for 4 birds, bring them down, cut them, chop them according to some narrations. Go through the process, disperse them. And number 5, the empirical experimentation, where Ibrahim alayhi salam observes the outcomes of this process. And finally, the intellectual stage, number 6, is the conclusion, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. And know that Allah is the all-wise, and Allah is of great majesty, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who will continuously satisfy your desire and will never repress or suppress your intellectual freedom. My dear brothers and sisters, this is a lesson we learn from Ibrahim alayhi salam. Let us reflect on it. Do you think that we are in need of reviving the critical tradition in our day and age? Is there a contradiction between free reasoning and deep iman in God? I would like to pose these questions for you to reflect on. Without further ado, we will now move to Sheikh Muhammad al-Dehnawi to recite the final part of our second part by Brother Hassan Lani.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you, Sheikh, for the beautiful recitation. Thank you, Muhammad, for the 6 stages that we always face this question: religion and science, are they contradictory, or they can work together in a complementary manner? I think you provided a beautiful, succinct answer to this question, which has been which was posed in the last 2-3 centuries. So I'll be covering the last 2 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, which basically is the summary of the entire Surah Al-Baqarah. In Surah Al-Baqarah, we discussed the different types of religiosity. We discussed the issue of creation. We discussed the first religious community. Then we talk about Ibrahim as a role model. Then we talk about different religious education, principle for our lifestyle, the moral compass that we talked about. Now, these 2 verses put everything together for a Muslim to have a beautiful life. As we said, a good life, a happy life. I would call the last 2 verses, especially the last verse, as the verse in modern language for self-compassion. How to take care of yourself, how to come into acceptance with who you are as a human being. So, first, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Here they say you can replace the word Allah with عادل. لا يكلف العادل نفسا إلا وسعها. So, here is to acknowledge your capacity, to acknowledge that you have a set of skills and you have a particular talent. And this is not to say you're not talented or skillful, rather to come to a realization who you are. And then capitalize on those set of skills, on that capacity. So that's why here it brings me to another existential question. They say there are things in life that we cannot change. I'll mention them. There are things in life which we cannot change. Now, as human beings, we may take 2 different approaches when it comes to this notion that there are things that we cannot change in this life, no matter what we do. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. I cannot change it. But human beings take 2 different responses when it comes to this issue. The first, you acknowledge, I cannot change it, and I will not try to change it. But the second group of people are in denial. They do not want to appreciate that there is a capacity and you should work within your capacity, and there are things in life that you cannot change. They want to change these laws. So what happens? What happens? Existential philosophers call this part, when you try to change things that you cannot change in life, as tragedies of life. So what are the things that we cannot change in life? Again, I'll come back to this point. The first thing is pain and suffering. Tell me which prophet did not go through pain and suffering. Tell me which great companion did not go through pain and suffering. Tell me which imam did not go through pain and suffering. Tell me which great scholar did not go through pain and suffering. We cannot. Can someone change it? Can someone stop it? We can minimize it. We can minimize it, and that's what Buddha used to say. The point of life is not to have a life free of suffering, rather to minimize suffering. So that's number 1. We cannot change it. Number 2 is death. We cannot change death. And that's why we are always living in worry and fear. Especially with like this notion of healthy lifestyle, which, as you said, it's becoming too it's consumerist behavior now. That it's not anymore about healthy lifestyle, it's about following the models and the fashion that is available, that I have to have a certain body type, that I need to fit into a certain type of clothes, and so on and so forth. The third is solitude, loneliness. But here we're talking about a specific type of loneliness. As Quran says, لَقَدْ جِئْتُمُونَ فُرَادًا. This solitude. And the fourth, which is beautifully exhibited in the last verse of Surah Al-Baqarah, is to be sinless. Yes, we try to avoid and minimize sins in life, but the only sinless being in the universe is God. By the virtue of being a human being, we commit sins, but it is about avoiding and minimizing. And that's why I call this verse the verse of self-compassion, because it says that نَسِينَا أَوْ أَخْطَأْنَا. You're acknowledging, I may forget, I may commit mistakes. When you do that, you are coming to a realization about your potentials. So if you fall down, even if it's hard, and you break every single bone in your body, you rise. The reason you rise up is because this is human nature, but not determined. It's two different things. So what happens here? If you remember, I said 3 components of a happy life, a good life. If to have the goodness, which is the ethics, is to have the happiness, which is this well-being and the psychology, and the meaning. Now I want to cover the psychology here. What do we mean when we say a happy life from this well-being and psychological aspect? Number 1, to have self-respect. Someone who doesn't respect himself or herself shall not expect to respect others. Number 2, to live in presence. And the story of Confucius tells us how to enjoy the flower, the rain, the sunset, the sunrise, the butterfly, how the birds move together, to enjoy the wind, be in the presence. And number 3 is self-acceptance. And that's what the verse is trying to tell us. Have this notion of self-acceptance. What happens when you have self-acceptance? You have this internal tranquility. As a result, you stop comparing yourself with the other. Rather, you start competing with yourself. Because you want yourself to be better. Not compared to the other, compared to your capacity. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. And I would like to finish with the 3 elements of self-compassion. But probably we don't have time, so we leave it to tomorrow. Would you like to add any comments, Brother Wahdi?
I think I'll just say in a nutshell that, as Brother Hassan mentioned, these are the key learnings for tonight. In order to live a good life, you need 3 elements. You need goodness, you need happiness, and you need meaning. And in the context of Ibrahim alayhi salam, we learn that the antidepressant, the best antidepressant for an organized society that kills our curiosity is a rekindled curiosity. And that is the meaning of the word curiosity comes from the Latin cure, which gives us both care and cure. If you want a cure for a dead society that does not think, you need to care about releasing the curiosity of your mind and tackling the questions without fear or favor. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow night. Thank you for joining us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
الله ابتسم طوبى للعبد إذا تنما